Okay, everyone, we are live on YouTube and I will be letting the delegates in shortly. Okay, we will be letting the delegates in now. I hope everyone is ready. We'll give it about 1 more minute for the waiting room to slow down, and then we'll turn it over to Patty. All yours, Patty.
Patty, you're muted.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the 38th annual, or biennial rather, convention of the League of Women Voters of Florida. I'm Patty Brigham, your president, and I call this meeting officially to order at 1:10 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you for joining us. Please prepare to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now, Ray Charles will sing America the Beautiful.
Not yet. Yeah. Try that again.
I don't have it on you, but still. I can't do this right now.
Oh, beautiful, for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine till all success be nobleness and every gain divine. When I was in school, you know, we used to sing it something like this. Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties, above the fruited plain. Look here, I'm talking about America, sweet America. You know, God done shed his grace on thee. He crowned thy good, saving brotherhood from sea to shining sea. America, I love you, America, because my God done shed his grace on thee, and you ought to love him for it, because he crowned thy good. He told me he would save his brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Thank you so much to the great and one and only Ray Charles. What an icon. Well, this will hopefully be our first and last virtual convention, but we're so glad that so many of you could make it. And we're delighted that you could and that you're here with us. And it's been an amazing journey to volunteer alongside all of you each and every day these past 3 years. So welcome to our convention. And at this point, I would usually thank our host league for welcoming us to their county. But since we're doing this virtually, I guess I'll just have to go ahead and thank the creators of Zoom. I would also like to thank our staff, Leah Nash, our executive director, Blake Summerlin, our communications manager, Shannon, our office manager, Emily, our intern, and all of the other staff who have worked so hard to put this convention together. So thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce our current board of directors. Cecile Schoon, first vice president. Sean Bartelt, second vice president. Mark Songer, treasurer. Trish Neely. Now, Trish is not able to be with us because she's in beautiful Hawaii, but she does send you her alohas. And in her place today, we welcome Kathy Wynn, longtime league member of the Tallahassee League, and she will be our acting secretary. Our directors, the Honorable Peggy Quince, Charlotte Nicomo, Rachel Fettergreen, Lisa Yerkin, and Lavon Grayson. So it is now time to welcome Sharon Lynn. She's our credentials chair, and she has graciously agreed to take on that role. Sharon's the president of the Seminole County League of Women Voters. Sharon, please provide your credentials report.
Thank you, Patty, and it's a pleasure to be here with everyone. We have certainly met the standard for our quorum. And for the purposes of any vote to be taken, if it requires a majority, we're talking about 83 people. If by chance a vote requires a 2/3 vote, we're talking about 109 people right this minute. And I think that'll do it.
Thank you so much. Thanks very much, Sharon. Okay, we've had some questions about leaving the convention, entry and exit. Sharon, as our credentials chair, would you respond to that question?
Well, I think, the best option, of course, is to not leave the room or via the Zoom meeting, because frankly, you can continue on the Zoom and do anything else as long as your camera and your microphone are disabled. So that's my recommendation. If you do have to leave, what I plan to do is keep track of anybody who leaves the meeting and then keep track if they re-enter for any reason. So I will try to keep track of that, if that answers the question. And if it's okay with our parliamentarian.
It is okay if you, once we get the voting process out of the way and you have left, it is okay then to re-enter.
To come back, yes.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. All right, now we move to the adoption of the proposed agenda. And I'll need a motion to adopt the agenda. You can put your motion into the chat box. Motion to adopt from Linnell. The motion has been seconded by Gia Farrell out of Polk County. All those in favor to adopt the agenda, raise your hand. This takes a little bit of time as everyone raises hands, so bear with us. You can raise your hand by going on to the participant portion of the chat box, and you will see a drop down. And I believe that's the way that you, or reactions, you can do that. And Blake Summerlin, our communications manager, is with us. Blake, can you explain, please, how our participants raise their hands?
Sure, everyone. So it's a little different for different devices, but if you're on a computer, which I imagine most of you are, it is in the participants tab, and it should just pop up there. So on the bottom of your screen, participants, 104 people have done it. So it's a smaller majority of us that haven't figured it out, but we want you all to know how to do it. So on that bottom bar where your chat bar is, your video, your mute, there is a participants one. And then there is where you'll be able to see where you can raise your hand. If you're on a phone, it could be that you need to click the More tab, the 3 dots in the lower right-hand corner of that bar if you're on a phone or iPad, and it should give you that option.
Okay, thank you, Blake. We now have 112 participants who have raised their hands. You can also go to the bottom of the screen and use reaction to do a thumbs up.
Right. That's correct.
The preference would be to raise the hand, not use the reactions. If you can't figure out how to raise your hand, please use the reactions, but in the most case, raise the hand. And to touch on this a little bit further, the staff on our side will be lowering your hand once we count how many hands have been raised. It'll likely show a number on your screen how many hands have been raised, but if your hand gets lowered, that means we have counted all of the hands that have raised, and do not put it back up. It could interfere with the vote count. So we will say we're going to count the hands now, and then we'll start to put them down once we get that total number. If it gets lowered, your hand's down, do not put it back up. It will interfere with the numbers. So throughout the convention, if your hand is lowered, it means your vote has been counted and we're moving forward. So keep that in mind. Looks like 118 folks have figured it out, and we should be chugging along.
All right, thank you so much, Blake. We have a majority, so the motion passes to adopt the proposed agenda. Thank you very much, everyone. Now we move on to the adoption of the rules of convention, and that will require another motion. Please put it into the chat box, and please, this is a new reality right now. Convention via Zoom. So it's going to take us a little bit more time to count the votes and to raise hands before you are asked to, or lower hands before you're asked to raise them again. So just bear with us. So we have a motion to adopt the proposed rules of convention from I see a second, but I don't see a first. Linda Pryor. Okay, she has made a motion from Palm Beach County. Melody Crease from St. Lucie County has seconded. So all those in favor of the adoption of the rules.
Patty, hold on just 1 second. We cannot move that quickly. We have to lower the hands from the first one. So let's take a second.
Okay, we'll do.
How did you get your hands up?
I went to react.
And did what?
And if you are not muted, I ask that you please mute your microphones unless you're called on to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, Patty.
Trying to vote. Okay.
Blake, have you lowered everyone's hands?
I will let you know when you're good to go.
Okay.
While we're waiting, Patty, I thought I would just mention a couple of things. I believe most people have done it, but please change your name. So it's your name and your local league name. And you can do that by clicking on the top three dots in your own screen and clicking on rename. And then we're also asking that in the chat box, if we could just do business only in the chat, because it is difficult to kind of read through, like just kind of personal comments. So business only in the chat would be appreciated. Thanks, everyone.
Leah is saying, Leah, you froze on us. Your internet.
Say again?
Your internet connection is not stable. You froze, so go ahead.
Okay, just again, if everybody could change their names to their first name, last name, and local league. You do that by clicking on the three dots in your own little screen and selecting rename. The second thing is as Blake said, do not lower your hands until the staff lowers them for you for accurate voting purposes. And if you could please just do business in the chat. If there's a lot of personal comments, it's just hard to follow the business motion. So just please business only in the chat function. Thank you.
God, this is not.
Thank you, Leah. And if you are not speaking, we ask that everyone please mute your microphones so that we don't hear chatter or things we might not want to be hearing. Thank you. So Blake, are we ready for the vote?
We are ready for the vote. Do not put your hand up yet. Do not primarily put your hand up until we say, now you can put your hands up. Patty, you may now,
Okay, we've had a first and a second to approve the rules of convention. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Where do I find myself? Oh God, I gotta find me. I can't do it.
we'll give about 30 more seconds for people to raise their hands. We have hit over a majority, but let's just give people 30 more seconds. Okay, there was 140 yeses or raised hands. We are good to go. That is the vote tally.
Thank you very much. Motion has passed. The rules of convention have been adopted. Next, we turn to the adoption of the convention minutes of 2019, and I'd like to call on our acting secretary, Kathy Wynn. Kathy?
Madam President, board members and delegates, I am pleased to present the minutes from the 2019 convention of the League of Women Voters of Florida. Take it away, Patty.
Thank you very much for that, Kathy. I appreciate that. Now, we will need to have a motion to approve the minutes of the 2019 convention. Okay, looks like we're getting... Okay, so Deb Kaufman has so moved. Is there a second? Motion second from Linda Pryor in Palm Beach County. Thank you very much. Now, we will take the vote on the motion to approve the minutes from the 2019 convention. Blake, give me the go ahead when we can do that.
The go ahead is not now. Please hold.
Okay, thank you.
Patty,
Excuse me, Patty. The minutes
Yes.
are not correct as presented.
Okay, who's speaking, please?
Clara Ann Graham.
Okay, Claire Ann, thank you. Hang on one second. Okay, if there is an objection to the minutes and the minutes are needing to be amended, please make a motion in the chat to amend the minutes.
Well, I tried and it didn't come across.
Okay, well then go ahead and verbally make your motion. State
Okay.
it as a motion, please.
Okay, in section, plenary section 3, the action motions committee report. C, the narrative is correct. It just needs motion carried. It doesn't have the words motion carried.
Got it? That is very easy to amend. Thank you.
Patty?
Yes.
Carol Smith. I also have a correction and it was getting too complicated.
Okay.
And it's not a motion, it's something missing.
Okay.
I don't know what to omit.
Hang on, please. One at
Sure.
a time. Please let me recognize
Sure.
you before speaking.
Thank you.
Okay, we have an amendment on the table, an amendment to the 2019 minutes of convention. We do need to have a first and a second on that motion to amend. Okay, I have a first.
Second it.
Okay, Monica Elliott from Broward has seconded. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So now we're back on voting on the minutes that have been amended. So we were back on the amendment. All those in, okay, so did we have, all those in favor of this amendment, say aye.
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 Love it. Love it.
Okay, I think the ayes have it. So now we are back on the minutes that have now been amended. And I am hearing that there is another amendment being raised. So please go ahead. Was that Carol who was speaking? You're recognized.
Yes, it was. The section on plenary 3, number 7A. It's an incomplete sentence, so I don't know what's missing. So I don't know how to amend it. If you can look at it.
Mark, we got all the paperwork in here, so we'll send you right down the hall. You're welcome. Go all the way down the hall, take a seat on the left side.
Leah, please mute all the microphones. Okay, we're looking for what you're pointing to, Carol. Thank you, Carol, for raising that. Your point is valid. What we will have to do is research what sentence this was supposed to be and complete that sentence. So that will be done after this convention. The research will take place and then it will be sent out to the members again. Okay, so we ask the members to adopt the minutes with anticipation of that sentence to be researched as to what it was and to be completed. So that's what we will need to do. So I ask that of the members today. And Carol, once again, thank you for raising that. Okay, yeah. We don't know if it should be all local leagues. Okay, so Gayla Larson has so moved. Linda Thompson from Sarasota has seconded. All those in favor of approving the minutes as they have been amended and with the expectation that this corrected incomplete sentence will take place and sent out to all the members, raise your hand.
We're gonna give it 30 more seconds for hands to be raised. Right, there was 131 hands raised, and we will now begin to put them down. The vote was 131.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is passed. I saw a question in the chat box. What about other corrections? The time to have made an objection or a motion for other corrections has passed. These minutes as amended with the expectation of that one correction to come in the future have been approved. So now we move on with our agenda. So.
Good for you.
Okay, so now let's move on to the introduction of our parliamentarian who's once again graciously offered to do the hard work of being a parliamentarian at our convention. She did it 2 years ago when we were in Collier County, and this time is considerably more challenging, but I'd like to welcome back former State Board Secretary. She's a member of the Volusia County League, and she's on the slate for this go-round. Thank you very much, Pat Drago, for joining us today to be our parliamentarian. And now it's time to talk. There she is. Thank you, Pat. Yay. All right. Now it's time for some of the real fun of the convention, which is to talk about what your state league has been up to these past couple of years, and then okay, all right. And so I need to let you know, we have concluded all the voting items of this first part of this plenary. So if there are anyone else if there's anyone else in the waiting room, they are now able to come in to plenary 1. Thank you. So now we get to do some praising of our local leagues, which we love to do because you all do such fabulous work. And we're first going to talk about what the state's been up to. And so I'd like to give the state of the state address. So Blake Summerlin, our communications manager, if you would put up the slides. Okay, it's the 38th Biennial Convention, State of the State Address. And I've been very excited to give this address to you. I'd like to thank Blake Summerlin for helping me put this PowerPoint together. Blake, first slide, please. What a couple of years it has been. First of all, as you all might remember, at the beginning of 2019, we had a leadership conference in Orlando, and we had a very intensive diversity, equity, and inclusion workshop that was put on by the Peace and Justice Institute of Valencia State College in Orlando. So this DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is just as important to the league now as our nonpartisan core policy. So DEI is something that we're committed to. Diversifying the league means more than just skin color. It means income, where you live, geography, gender. There are many things that make up a diverse league. And we will be continuing to put this front and center in all of the decision-making that takes place within the League of Women Voters of Florida. And I know some of you local leagues have diversity committees. That's wonderful. And we hope that eventually all of our local leagues will have them. So we have an incredible, energetic staff that I'm so proud of. They have done such amazing work. Our executive director, Leah Nash. Our communications manager, Blake Summerlin. Our office administrator, we welcome her, fabulous. Shannon Badenman, special projects manager. You'll recognize this name as she used to be our executive director. Lisa Kayea is working part-time for us now, writing grants. Our bookkeeper, Lisa Dickey, and our summer intern, thank you, Emily, you're doing a fantastic job, Emily Marshall. And there is our staff, and I know you all, if you could, would give them a big round of applause because they certainly deserve it. Next slide. What has been happening in 2019 through 21? Well, we had a big challenge last year under the guise of COVID-19 and global pandemic, and we had to really move quickly to change the way that we communicated, especially in an election year. It was not easy. So fortunately, Zoom is being used globally as our other online platforms, and it's become the preferred method over traditional phone calls. We've been actually having our local leaders call have turned into Zoom calls. And it's been a great way for us to be able to see all of you because we haven't been together in person for so long. And fortunately, that's going to be changing very soon because more and more of us are getting vaccinated. Excuse me. So COVID, what was one silver lining? There weren't many, but one of them was we had talked for a long time about a lunch and learn series. Well, that was the year 2020 to implement them. So last year, every Friday at 1 p.m., we had a 1-hour lunch and learn for our members with very relevant speakers to our topics, our issues, our cause, such as the Brennan Center, various supervisors of elections, Pamela Marsh of the First Amendment Foundation, the Honorable Peggy Quince, who's now on our state board, Ellen Frieden to talk about redistricting, which of course is coming back up. So we had a treasure trove of excellent speakers. And then this year we moved them to every other Friday, and they're continuing, and we're delighted they have been so popular. And we're so thrilled by the huge number of attendees at these lunch and learns, which we do record, and they are available in case you miss one. And we've also had an increased presence in Tallahassee. And this is in thanks to two significant groups. One is the Capital Alliance Group. This is the lobbying firm who's been in Tallahassee for over 25 years that we decided to hire in 2018. And they have proven their worth hundreds of times over. They truly have. And they are highly respected. They know everyone in Tallahassee. Everyone knows them. And they have helped us get meetings that we were not able to get before because they have good relationships across the aisle with the majority party. And it's very important that we have the dialogue. So we are so thankful to Dr. Jeff Sharkey, Lauren Gallo, and Taylor Beal of the Capital Alliance Group. And in the same breath, the Florida League's Lobby Corps. They have been absolutely indispensable to us the past two sessions. Trish Neely, the chair of the Lobby Corps, has testified multiple times, really busy. And this past legislative session was a real bear, because if you wanted to testify before the Senate, you had to go over to the Civic Center, and they had a very archaic hookup over there. And then if you wanted to testify before the House, there was very limited space in large committee rooms. Trish Neely did an outstanding job. She was probably quoted more than any previous lobbyist we've ever had in multiple media publications and in broadcasts. So Trish Neely, thank you for the outstanding work that you have done as the Lobby Corps chair, and we look forward to more from Trish and her colleagues on the Lobby Corps team. Thank you. Next slide. 2020, what a year. Well, thanks to all of our local leagues, thanks to you. Look at these numbers, 275,000 printed voter guides were distributed. 1 million plus page views to the state league's website between the primary and the general election. That's just incredible traffic. We had over 958,000 Florida-specific sessions on Vote 411, over 330,000 postcards mailed to returning citizens. Thank you to our local leagues for participating in those returning citizen postcards. They made such a huge difference. Thank you to our staff. Thank you to Lisa Calleja, who did a lot of the organizing of those postcards. And thank you to Cecile Schoon, our fearless returning citizens leader. Cecile's contribution to this effort has been nothing short of miraculous, and we cannot thank her enough. Next slide. 2020 election, part 2. Well, we masked up and worked the polls. First of all, we did ad buys, and they paid off. 8 digital ad buys. We got over 6 million views. We had 11 plus vote411.org billboards across the state of Florida. Thank you to the local leagues who did that. 308,000 plus calls and texts to voters, and nearly 10,000 plus masks were distributed during early voting and get out the vote weekend. Our leagues, you guys went above and beyond. Can't thank you enough. We had a historic turnout in Florida in last year's election. Thanks to our supervisors, all of you who worked the polls and put your lives at risk during COVID-19 and worked election protection. You can thank yourself and your other league members for making sure that Florida held a safe, efficient, historic election. We were the model, and it wasn't always that way, as you might remember, 2000, for example. So thank you. Next slide. All right. We, as always, try to go to Tallahassee to meet with leaders in state government. We were not able to do that in person this year, but in 2019, you see there our first vice president, Cecile Schoon, Michelle Levy was on our board, and myself with Agriculture Commissioner Nikki Fried. We also met with Senator Jeff Brandes, and were able to have some other key meetings with Secretary of State Laurel Lee, for example. So it was also a record year for action alerts. It was a very busy legislative session, as you see here, all of the action alerts that we had to put out on key legislative action. And we had 35 plus meetings with legislators and cabinet members since 2019. So that's a significant number. I know many of you in the local leagues were meeting with your legislators in the districts. Thank you for doing that. Next slide. Well, we had some hard legislative battles. In the 2020 session, it was House Bill 7037, which kind of rose to the top of one of the bills that we were fighting. And what it did was restrict the citizens' initiative by increasing judicial review. Our legislature has been going after citizens' initiatives and direct democracy for quite some time, and they have not yet let up. We also had Senate Bill 404, which required the parental consent for minors seeking abortion. Our Reproductive Health Committee, Health and Justice Committee worked so well with a large coalition of others to try to defeat that bill. But the legislature had a will of its own. But thank you all for fighting. It was well worth it. This past session was unlike any that we had ever seen, as the legislature essentially used COVID-19 to limit public testimony. You were lucky if you got, in some of the meetings, 30 seconds to testify. In a year of a major pandemic, when we should have been seeing bills on Medicaid expansion, on addressing the unemployment inequities because of this pandemic, instead we saw Governor DeSantis prioritize House Bill 1, the anti-protest bill, which the league got behind and fought big time with a huge coalition of partners. Unfortunately, that bill did pass and is now in litigation. The league is not a part of that lawsuit, but other groups have taken it to court. Senate Bill 90, which struck right at the heart of what we do, which is support and protect and help voters. And it was a voter suppression bill. We fought the bill with a huge coalition of voting rights advocates. We testified, we wrote letters, we wrote op-eds, we had press conferences. We did everything we could, but legislature, again, had a will of its own. This was another priority of Governor DeSantis, who announced he wanted this elections bill passed. It did pass. And so now we met with our lawyers and we were ready. Minutes after Governor DeSantis signed that bill, just a few minutes later, the League of Women Voters of Florida filed a lawsuit against the state. And we're the lead plaintiff on that lawsuit. And we are very hopeful that we will win. Senate Bill 1890, what did that one do? Well, it restricted citizens' initiatives by restricting donations. As you all know, it takes a lot of money to get a citizen initiative onto the ballot, millions of dollars, because you have to hire, these sponsors need to hire paid petition gatherers. Volunteers alone can't do it. And I know you all work so hard getting petitions signed, but it just takes a huge number of troops to do this. Well, what happens now? There's been a cap put on donations to these citizen initiative political action committees of $3,000 per donation. So, and that is before it gets on the ballot. So as you all know, it's going to be very hard to get a citizen initiative on the ballot with that kind of cap. That litigation, and there's no cap, by the way, if you're a candidate. That bill is now under litigation as well. Other groups have filed a lawsuit. I believe ACLU may be one of them. And then there was House Bill 7045, which expanded school vouchers. Of course, that's something we're very much against and have fought very hard for a long time to prevent this attack on our public education. Sorry for the bad news, but that is the state of our state legislature, and we are warriors and we are not afraid of a long fight, and this is a long game. So that's something that our lobbyists have taught us, and that is something that we are learning. It's a long game. Next slide. All right, well, unfortunately, there were more vigils to attend and to speak at because of, again, we're seeing a rise in gun violence. So this is something that the league continues to work on. We have a new state gun safety chair, Keisha Shapiro. She's going to do a fantastic job. As you know, 5 years ago, after the Pulse mass shooting, the Florida Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence was co-founded by the league and the Campaign to Keep Guns Off Campus. This has been functioning as a separate entity. And the steering committee of the coalition recently voted to incorporate. So it's spinning off into its own independent entity. It will be a C3 and a C4, which will allow it to, first of all, go after grants. Secondly, be a little bit more partisan when it comes to calling out legislators who are pro-gun. So the work of the coalition is 5 years strong now, and so the coalition is moving on into a new phase as an independent entity. Next slide. All right. What a collective voice we have. We have been sending out press releases, holding press conferences, letters to state officials like the governor, for example. We've been on many coalition. We have many coalition partners that worked with us on the 2020 election. So our voice was raised loud and strong. The League was everywhere. And to prove that, next slide. Press and publicity. We made sure that our voice was heard. In 2020, we hired Salter Mitchell, professional marketing firm, because we wanted to get out in front of as many cameras as possible and tell people to get your vote by mail ballot now, so you could prepare to use it to vote under a pandemic, either putting it in the mailbox, a drop box, or surrendering it in person. So Blake, next slide. Here's our media footprint in the state of Florida. Over 800 interviews, op-eds, letters to the editor, and media mentions since the 2019 state convention. Just an amazing amount of press, and you'll see some examples here. Now, this is mainly the state. Look at this national news coverage that we've been able to attain. We were in every single major newspaper, it seems, in the United States. The Washington Post, the New Yorker did a feature on Florida. It was a cover story. The Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Forbes, Talking Points Memo, The Hill, the CBS Evening News, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. We were everywhere. And so the profile of the League of Women Voters of Florida was significantly raised. And we are very proud and pleased about that. Next slide. Social media. Thank you to Sean Bartelt, our communications director on our board, who's worked so hard to raise our social media footprint, and to Blake Summerlin. As you see, the Florida League reigns as the most digitally forward state league in the nation. Look at the followers on Facebook since the 2019 convention. And we had an audience increase on Twitter of 64.24%. And that is not easy to do on Twitter. It's a whole other social media animal. So we are so pleased about that the league is becoming known far and wide. And I will tell you a story. After we filed our lawsuit on Senate Bill 90, the voter suppression bill, I received a thank you letter from the League of Women Voters of Hawaii, thanking us, saying we will do everything we can in Hawaii to lift up what you're doing in Florida. That's what that's what happens when you get lots of press. Okay, events and trips. And at this point, I'd like to mention Annie Betancourt, our wonderful longtime league member from Miami-Dade, was on our state board for a number of years, shared with me a letter from the Federation of Cuban Women. And it is a cordial greeting extended to all members of the league, conveying that the Federation of Cuban Women are continuing to want us to know that they express a clear message of unity of Cuban women. They have more than 4 million affiliates. This is the Federation of Cuban Women that represent more than 91% of the population of women over 14 years of age. And so I am obviously sharing this with you as our Cuba trips led by Annie Betancourt have been so important to the League of Women Voters of Florida. And Annie has done such a tremendous job. They have also been money makers for the state. And we've learned a lot about the nation of Cuba, and it's such an important education for us all. So Annie, thank you. Thank you to the Federation of Cuban Women for that wonderful letter, and we will frame it and put it in our office. So now we go on to the rest of our events and trips. Of course, we had our last in-person lobby day in 2020, and I believe that press conference that you see there was all about the census. We travel up and down the Sunshine State, and I was able to do that quite a bit before COVID, and I enjoyed every moment of it. You see me here with Clara Ann Graham. She was the president of the Lee County League, and we were celebrating their birthday. So it's been wonderful attending all of your celebrations. Next slide. And as you see here, we went back to Cuba in March of 2020, and that was our last trip before COVID-19. Once again, thank you, Annie. And we have our fingers crossed for our signature events to return again in 2022. And we are very hopeful that they will. And I know Annie has her fingers more than crossed about that. We had a number of virtual events aside from our virtual lunch and learns. We had a statewide discussion on poverty in Florida. It was an evening event where we welcomed Agriculture Commissioner Nikki Fried, and that was a terrific turnout. We had a restoration of the vote to talk about the Voting Rights Advancement Act that featured a number of speakers, which was a very successful evening event. Next slide. And this was one of the absolute thrills of my presidency. At our lobby day this year, which was virtual, we wondered, what are we going to do? Usually we award one legislator of each party the Defender of Democracy Award. The year before, we awarded a journalist. And this year, we wanted to do something different, and we wanted to do something special. We also, our state board unanimously voted to rename that award to the David King Defender of Democracy. David King was the author of the Fair Districts Amendments and one of the leading lawyers that won us fair districts in Florida. David died suddenly in December of last year. So we wanted to honor him in perpetuity, and we did so by renaming this award the David King Defender of Democracy Award. And what we decided to do was, who better to award this certificate to than all of the league members who worked the polls during the pandemic in 2020 or election protection. So all of those league members, there were well over 200. We sneakily asked you to please send us your names if you worked the polls. We didn't tell you why. We just said, we're keeping inventory. Well, no, the real reason why was because we wanted to toast you all at Lobby Day and present the over 200 league members who worked the polls in 2020 and thank them. And so you all were the recipients of last year's David King Defender of Democracy Award. Next slide. Well, I like to say when I go out and talk to the public, the League of Women Voters, we educate, we advocate, and we litigate. So let's take a look at some of the litigation. Well, we've had two resounding victories for our college students. There was a prohibition that came about under Rick Scott's administration that prohibited early vote sites from being placed on college and university campuses. We went to court and won. As a result, in 2018, all major Florida's university campuses and some state colleges had those vote sites, and approximately 65,000 students voted early at those sites in 2018, which was a huge victory. Then we had to go back to court again because the legislature slipped something into the statute that went to non-metered parking, and you had to have sufficient number of non-metered parking for early voting. Everyone who's gone to a college campus knows you have to pay to park. So we went right back to court. We reached a settlement with Secretary Lee, and early voting on college campuses remains. So that was the second victory. We went to court, of course, over the implementation of Amendment 4, which clearly the majority of Floridians voted for, to give returning citizens their voting rights back. But then the legislature passed Senate Bill 7066. We were victorious in a number of courts, but ultimately the state appealed the ruling, and the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals said, wait, you have to pay to vote, because the legislature had to attach fines and fees. But the good news is, next slide, is that we reached out to thousands of voters, returning citizens, who we found out through a partnership with the ACLU of Florida did not have fines and fees attached to their sentences. And so we did a campaign of postcard outreach and phone call outreach and texting, and we were able to register over 20,000 returning citizens, which was a victory in and of itself. Thank you. Days in court soon to come. Well, as I've mentioned, we are back in court with that Senate Bill 90, the voter suppression bill. Here are the other groups that are on the lawsuit with us: Black Voters Matter, the Florida Alliance for Retirees, and several individual plaintiffs to challenge Senate Bill 90. We certainly hope that this court case is resolved quickly. Certainly, we hope before the 2022 election. Next slide. Next slide. All right, I'd like to recognize these amazing women and some men who have been our action chairs over the past couple of years. Lisa Yurkin and Kathy Gunlack, our education co-chairs, thank you so much for your terrific work. Our new gun safety chair, Keisa Shapiro, we wish you great luck. Molly Doman was our gun safety chair before her. Molly, thank you for your efforts. Diane D'Imperio is our outgoing healthcare chair. Thank you for your work, Diane. Kathy Wynn is our new chair, and we know you'll do a terrific job. Immigration, Eve Barber and Linnell Philman, thank you both for stepping up to the plate here. Juvenile justice, can't thank Charlotte Nicomo enough for your work on this issue. And Jennifer Adams, who is on the slate for a director for the new board, is her co-chair and will be continuing to work on this important issue. Thank you, Jennifer. Next slide. Judy Hushin, the brilliant chemist who lives over in Collier County. Judy, you're a terrific natural resources chair. We couldn't figure out some of these complicated water bills without you. Thank you so much. National popular vote, Kathleen Crampton formed her own coalition on this issue, and Kathleen, your commitment to this cause has been outstanding. We have a terrific clean energy team. One of the members you recognize, Deirdre McNabb, our president for many years. Mary DuBois, Maxine Connor, their commitment to clean energy, solar, and electric vehicles is unmatched. And we've seen a lot of movement on those issues as a result. Thank you to Reproductive Health and Justice co-chairs. These are new co-chairs, Gender Monday and Stacy Croto before that. Joe Shim. Joe, thank you for your work. For the census, Barbara Overton. You did a wonderful job. The census numbers were not what we wanted, but we had some interference out of Washington. Barbara, you did a great job. So see you in 2028. Next slide. Voter Services, our state board member, Rachel Fettergreen. Thank you so much, Rachel, for all the work you did as Voter Services Chair. And on diversity, equity, and inclusion, can't thank Betty Haynes and Dr. Ethelene Jones enough for a 2-year study that they embarked upon and turned in their report recently to the board, which we adopted. We have a new membership chair, Dr. Felicia Jett. Thank you, Dr. Jett. And finally, our new Speakers Bureau Chair, Mary Schultz, and Ethelene Jones is stepping back from being that chair, and she's done a superb job over the years. Thank you so much, Ethelene, for your work. We did receive some special honors of distinction. The Guardian that we wanted to share with you. I mean, we got to toot our own horn, right? The Guardian selected 6 women around the United States who were leaders on voting against voter suppression. I was very honored to be one of them. And that is the cover story from the Guardian. Next slide. And then our wonderful first vice president, Cecile Schoon, received the Florida Bar's President's Pro Bono Service Award. Thank you, Cecile, and congratulations. And finally, I can't thank Trish Neely enough. I've already been very effusive about her, but look at all she did. Trish, I hope you're having fun in Hawaii, because your ears must be burning with all the praise that you're hearing from us today. So Trish, thanks again. And also special thanks to Barbara Ryder. Thank you for your incredible work in facilitating our returning citizen outreach and your efforts alongside our first vice president, Cecile Schoon. And then to our league member and past board member, Michelle Levy, for her work on voter services and for being our watchdog while defending home rule, which certainly needed defending this past legislative session, as we saw quite an assault on home rule. Thank you to our board. I've already announced our board members. Thank you so much. These are our outgoing board members. Thank you for your work. It's been a true pleasure and honor to work alongside all of you. And thank you. That is the state of the state of 2021, and looking forward to good things and the lifting of this pandemic as the year progresses. So thank you so much for that. And at this point in our agenda, it is time. Well, it's actually, we're a little bit over time. We're due for a 2:15 10-minute break. And Sean, if you could stand by, I'm going to go ahead and call for the 15-minute break. And then when we come back, Sean Bartelt will do part 1 of the local league roll call and highlights. So everyone, let's take a 10-minute break and be back here at 2:25. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's time to reconvene our convention. We're still in Plenary 1, and we are going to get to our really fun part of our convention, which is bragging about all of you local leagues. But first, we did look, Pat Drago, our parliamentarian, took another good hard look at Robert's Rules of Order and found out that we can indeed continue to correct the minutes from the 2019 convention. So I believe Bill Johnson had a correction he would like to make. Bill, could you let us know what the correction is? Okay, I'm just learning that the acting secretary has received that she sent the revisions this morning, but she had computer problems and did not receive them. So Bill, I'm going to ask if you could unmute your microphone, and or Blake, if you could unmute Bill Johnson's microphone so he can tell us what the correction to the minutes should be.
Yeah, Patty, they were sent to
Bill, we need to have Bill Johnson's microphone unmuted. Okay, Bill, you're unmuted.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I did send them to Leah this morning,
Okay,
and I got a acknowledgement from her that they would be incorporated. So I don't need to go through
Bill,
them. They were just
unfortunately,
spelling.
we cannot hear you. Could you type the correction into the chat box, please?
Patty, they were some misspellings. So in plenary session 2 on page 3, Marty's name was misspelled. In plenary session 2, the word will, it should be will, not bill. And then in plenary session 2, page 2, the word allowing is misspelled. So I think we can correct those misspellings.
I have an inquiry of the chair. This is Karen Wilkerson. Don't we need a motion to reconsider?
No, thank you, Karen. These are editorial amendments. They're grammatical errors. They're not substantive content. So we do not need a motion. These are easily corrected. Bill, you're an excellent proofreader. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other amendments to the minutes that we did not hear? All right, hearing none, we'll move on with our agenda. Thank you very much. And thank you, Pat, for digging into that more deeply. Now it's time to introduce our second vice president, Sean Bartelt. She is going to go through our local league roll call part 1 and brag on all of what our local leagues have been doing. So Sean, the floor is yours.
All right, Blake's gonna pop up, and it's been an incredible 2 years for local leagues throughout the state. So much incredible work and activity that's been done. And we're gonna start with the League of Women Voters of Alachua County. So in voter services, they actually created the League of Women Voters of Alachua County YouTube channel and gave 3 virtual forums with bipartisan representation, including the primary election forum, where they had 25 candidates and over 4,800 views between Facebook and YouTube. The Climate Action Team gave 3 climate change forums featuring experts in the topics of health, living sustainably, and solar energy. And their solar cooperative partnered with Solar United Neighbors in the launch of 2 successful solar co-ops and continues to support rooftop and utility scale installations in Alachua County. League of Women Voters of Bay County. They hosted a community town hall from curriculum by the National Issues Forum A House Divided, a diverse group of more than 70 area residents attended. They received funding from Panama City Mayor for the inaugural Alice Paul Award, which was announced at a holiday reception at City Hall, kicking off 2020 as the centennial of women's suffrage with a proclamation. And with local station WMBB, they awarded 3 millennial women for outstanding civic service. They placed 12 digital indoor and outdoor billboards around the county from 3 different funding sources: the SOE, Black Voters Matter, and Women Vote, which was a tribute to Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. In Broward County, a very busy year. Voter education efforts before COVID included distributing 4,000 brochures and postcards at local events with election information. Once COVID hit, they converted to door hanger distribution in low turnout precincts, distributing 35,000 door to door and at food distribution sites, including 5,000 bilingual hangers. The Broward gun safety efforts with Lock It Up resulted in nearly 30,000 brochures and 15,000 gun locks being distributed. They raised funding and procured free exhibit material to create a large centennial exhibit at the Broward County Main Library, including 30 posters of national, state, and local suffragettes. Originally scheduled for August 2020, the exhibit will now happen in August 2021, so we can all go down and check it out in Broward County. The League of Women Voters of Charlotte County educated voters on proposed state amendments that included closed circuit television presentations to a multi-level retirement home, website content, and Zoom presentations. They addressed 2 major rounds of postcards to support registration of returning citizens. And in May, the current president, Gene Finks, and the former president were interviewed by multiple publications and television stations, including the Port Charlotte Sun, in response to the county's abrupt move designating Charlotte a Second Amendment sanctuary. To quote President Finks, "I think their use of the word sanctuary is misplaced. Usually a sanctuary is a place to go to be safe. I think this is a wrong direction. Our next meeting will be to figure out ways to protest this." And I'm sure that's happening right now in Charlotte. The League of Women Voters of Citrus County. Director Maxine Connor worked with other board members and partners on the second Citrus County Solar Co-op, promoted electric vehicles in their county. Many local entities endorsed those efforts and helped build positive community interactions. Director Rosemary Niles worked with several individuals to write guest columns for the Citrus Chronicle about the consequences of several bills during this legislative session. The articles were also shared on the Citrus County Facebook page. The Collier County Minority Outreach Team helped generate an 88% voter turnout in minority precincts, held census campaigns at local food banks, and participated in vaccine education efforts. They developed a partnership with public schools and 4-H to familiarize students with government operations. It was a 4-day program that included meetings with the tax collector, commissioners, and other public officials and government officials. And they have the local leadership program, a 5-session program, which is in its 3rd year, developing local league leaders. Selected participants studied leadership theory, the League of Women Voters, programs and issues, and met with local and county leaders and helped contribute to league strategic planning. In Hillsborough County, getting the message out in times of a pandemic. We have all become so much more creative in how to do this. Food bank voter registration, gun safety information at Market Fair, Medicaid expansion event, presentations to outside organizations. Designated speakers in the league made 38 presentations this past year to outside organizations, reaching nearly 2,000 people. Topics included ballot amendments, the 19th Amendment, the League, the national popular vote. It was an unprecedented number of presentations within 1 year for the Hillsborough County League. Reaching out to diverse communities. Hillsborough worked with local community leaders in Wamama, and I don't know if I pronounced that right, an outlying part of our county, of Hillsborough County, with a sizable Latinx population, to share information about voter registration and voting. They also placed ads promoting voter registration and voting info in small newspapers to reach a more diverse audience, such as Creative Loafing, The Laker, and La Gaceta. The League of Women Voters of the First Coast, Jacksonville, which includes 4 counties, Duval, Nassau, Clay, St. Johns County. A busy year. They registered 723 voters, primarily new citizens. They sent voter education emails to 18,000 NPAs across 4 counties with information on Vote 411, vote by mail, and county referendums. They generated 47,000 Vote 411 users in the First Coast area. They hosted a virtual celebration of the 19th Amendment in partnership with the Historical Society, and they held a centennial celebration luncheon recognizing 2 lifetime leaguers. They worked with local partners to influence the SOE to create a safe and accessible environment for in-person voters and to set up secure drop boxes outside of polling places. Lee County, 16 virtual candidate forums for the 2020 election. Vote 411 voter guide, an 80% response rate for Lee County candidates in 32 contested races, 26 primary and 25 general. Advocacy for health, climate, affordable housing, and juvenile justice. Increased community participation in education programs. The League of Women Voters of the Lower Keys, Monroe County. I was born in Key West, so I love that spot. Projects included Vote 411 updates, a television presentation on the 2020 ballot referendums for the county television network. They helped people complete census forms, hand addressed and mailed hundreds of returning citizen postcards, and produced celebration of notable women of all ages for the League of Women Voters of the Lower Keys website. They hosted speakers on a multitude of topics impacting the Lower Keys and had a Key West forward session with the mayor, Terry Johnson, and a meet and greet with Representative Carlos Jimenez on Zoom. The League of Women Voters of Manatee County rolled out Vote 411 for the first time. They ran 12 candidate forums with candidates in both primaries and the general election, and opened 2 new very active committees, social issues and government. The League of Women Voters of Miami-Dade County sent hundreds of thousands of texts and thousands of postcards to voters living in low turnout areas. They sponsored billboards and bus ads all over the county, encouraging voting and use of Vote 411. And they launched a new Hot Topic series. They kicked off a social media campaign, When She's Not Leaguing. I'd like to see that. I haven't seen it yet. So you can see from just the first half of the counties in the state, the tremendous hard work done by all of our local leagues throughout the state will continue tomorrow.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you to those local leagues. Wow, really impressive work. This is the fun part of convention, when we get to hear about what our local leagues have been doing. And so now comes another fun part, and I'll tell you what, it's a very difficult decision to make. We asked local leagues to submit for the top 3 awards that we give for work of excellence. Well, all of you do excellent work, so it was a very tough decision to make, but we had to make it. So I would like at this time to talk with you about, instead of calling them first, second, and third place awards, it's going to be, let's see, we've named them silver, orange, and the top award getter, platinum. So let me tell you a little bit about our silver award winner. As you may recall from one of the slides, this league formed a coalition with the ACLU, the Voter Participation Project of the county, and the Florida Voter Mobilization Project, which includes the NAACP, the Urban League, Divine Nine, and a number of Black pastors. They mailed postcards to 1,700 returning citizens and 1,000 general public members encouraging voter registration. They designed and purchased 35,000 door hangers, 10,000 for August, and 25,000 for November. 5,000 were in Spanish. And the distribution was door to door and at food distribution sites by members and coalition partners. And if I were to continue to tell you all that this league had done, it would take me quite a bit more time. But with that being said, I am very pleased to announce the League of Women Voters of Broward County is the recipient of the Silver Award for 2021. Yay to Broward County. Okay, let's go to our next award winner. That is the recipient of the Gold Award. Let me tell you a little bit about what this league was up to. Once again, I'm just gonna talk about the highlights. This league got behind some local amendments that were very critical to the environment. The rights of nature organizers and the Save Split Oak Forest, and encouraged other organizations to also jump on board early. This league reached into the Spanish-speaking community by having hundreds of yard signs printed that read C, C, C for each of the 3 amendments, and they put the signs where they could do the most good, and they had twofold benefits: Hispanic community outreach and charter amendment support. Great campaign. But this is what really got our attention. After the 2020 election, this league saw an additional opportunity to do some good. Their Natural Resources Committee worked with the City of Winter Park, the City of Orlando, Orange County government, Ideas for Us, and the Eco Strategies Group to turn discarded election signs into an alternative energy source. So as a result, for 2 weeks, the campaign encouraged residents, candidates, political parties to deliver those plastic yard signs to collection locations around the county. The goal was to gather a ton of signs, and that initiative prevented a mountain of signs from going to the dump. Instead, they were transported to New Cycle Energy, which transformed them from bulky, discarded plastic into New Cycle's EnviroFuel cubes that were sold to Cemex, a regional cement manufacturer, where they were used to generate electricity, replacing coal as a clean energy source. And at the conclusion of that drive, over 10,000 signs, that's 2 tons, were repurposed instead of being trashed. So congratulations to the winner of the Gold Award, to the League of Women Voters of Orange County. Congratulations, League of Women Voters of Orange County.
Yay.
And now, yay! Now we come to our Platinum Award winner. This league really thought outside of the box and got very creative. They commissioned a beautiful mural for the west-facing wall of a prominent building to promote voting by mail in their city. They secured an additional grant from Plus Project to commission a second mural on Central Avenue in their city to promote diversity and voting. They distributed just thousands and thousands of guides about the constitutional amendments. They increased voter turnout, and they were fortunate to have funding and community partnership in the Foundation for a Healthy St. Pete. And so with the leftover funding of the Engage St. Pete project, they were able to develop and implement a social marketing campaign in low voter turnout precincts in St. Petersburg. Yeah. They promoted vote by mail to Black women who were already registered to vote using targeted texting campaigns, sending children's ballots, and community-driven social media and photography campaigns that highlighted real people and their families in the community for voting. They wanted to promote voting as a tradition, and the campaign was called, and I love this name, Democracy Starts at Home. Indeed it does. So congratulations to our Platinum Award winner, the League of Women Voters of St. Petersburg. Yay! Yay! Congratulations, everyone. Thank you all. And if we could give all the local leagues an award, we would, but we had to pick the top 3. So thank you for your outstanding, superb contributions to Florida and to our democracy. And I just need to announce at this time that we asked 2 members of First Coast Jacksonville League to be our minute readers. And we thank very much that we have received confirmation that the readers of the minutes will be Linda Mann and Marriott Brodeur. So thank you very much for doing that. It's now time for me to introduce our Budget Committee Chairperson, Ray Kellick, who will then go on to introduce our State Board Treasurer, Mark Songer, as they discuss the 2021-22 League of Florida budget and the League of Women Voters of Florida education budget. So may I introduce Ray Kalick, the Budget Committee Chairperson, and the Treasurer, Mark Songer, for the budget report.
Thank you, Patty. It certainly has been a nice afternoon of seeing how much has been accomplished last year, and to know going into tomorrow just what other strategic initiatives are going to be achieved in the new year. I was quite pleased to be the chairperson of the Budget Committee this year. And I also want to introduce the other members of the committee. Gina Gallo from St. Petersburg, Joe Matthews from Pensacola Bay Area, Anna Callwood from Lee County, Leah Nash from the state, Florida State, and Lisa Dickey also from the Florida State. But more importantly, we also had Mark Songer, treasurer of the Florida League, but also of the Lower Keys. I want to say that it was a pleasure working with the committee because Mark was so open to sharing a lot of information, to laying out the strengths and also the challenges, and was very patient in listening to us on possible changes that he might want to consider. The budget was well thought out. It covers both strategic initiatives and operating needs. And as you will hear from Mark, it also points out the risk area and what are steps that would be taken if they were to come true. So with that, I turn it over to Mark.
Thanks, Ray. I would like to thank the Budget Committee and staff for putting together this budget along with what I was able to do to help the process. What I'd like to do today is give you a high-level overview of the League of Women Voters of Florida, Inc. budget for April of 2021 through March of 2022 that was included in your convention packet. Then we will open it up for questions. If you have questions during my presentation, please put them in the chat and we will take them in the order that they're received. The good news on the per member payment, or PMP, is that there is no change in the rate for the Florida state contribution or for the US League. The Florida payment remains at $15 for primary members, $7.50 for additional household members, and student memberships are free. There are over 5,000 members throughout the state of Florida in the local leagues and members at large who support this budget with their PMP contributions. This budget is based on the membership as of January 31st of 2021. We have plans during this year to increase membership, and state staff will be supporting the local league membership committees to make this happen. This will enhance our ability to deliver on the advocacy programs of the League of Women Voters of Florida in the future. The committee looked at the top priorities from the strategic plan for programs. In the Advocacy Fund, one of our top priorities is to lobby the Florida legislature to support or oppose bills. In that effort, we plan to engage Capital Alliance Group for a third year for legislative session to assist the League and the excellent job that our lobby corps does in Tallahassee. We have an extra overlap in this year's budget because of 21 legislative session going into the first month of the new budget year. We also have expenditures for the 2022 session that will start up in January. Capital Alliance Group will be supporting us during committee weeks as well as throughout the session to help push our priorities in the right direction. There are a few events that are scheduled for this year's budget. We had Lobby Day in April, and that was a successful event both programmatically as well as financially. In February 2022, our next Lobby Day will be an in-person event once again, so the costs are more than a virtual event. We are making plans now so that we will have a good impact on the legislature. Today's convention is part of the 21 to 22 fiscal year budget, as well as council, which will happen next March. In addition to our self-funded program expenditures, grants that we receive will also support actions on our legislative priorities through education and lobbying. Most of the League's litigation happens through the Advocacy Fund. We have good partners who step up to support our priorities and pay the attorneys and most other costs involved in litigation. You've seen these names before, but I'd like to give you the reason why we are able to implement our program activities. Of course, many of you are familiar with Leah Nash, our executive director, and Blake Summerlin, our statewide communications manager, and the work that they have done during this year's legislative session. Shannon Bidenman is our new office administrator, and we are looking forward to Shannon's skills in helping us to serve the local leagues, as well as make sure that we are efficient in our administrative functions. We have 2 part-time staff members. Lisa Cahea is continuing as our project manager, focused on finding grants that will support our program priorities. I want to recognize the outstanding job that our staff did during Lisa's time as executive director in 2020, with a grueling schedule and lots of grant money to spend, getting out the vote, and serving underrepresented communities in Florida. The other Lisa Dickey, is our new bookkeeper who started last December and is working 20 hours per week. The budget includes a legal fellowship position, although we are still looking for funding on that. Next, I would like to go over highlights of the budget expenses. The first row shows lobbying and advocacy programs. These are all the things that we do that are essential to our program priorities for the League. The first column is our proposed budget for the fiscal year 21 to 22. We have budgeted an increase in expenditures this year, partly from grants and partly because of the early legislative session in 2022. Employee compensation and contract service is the biggest line item of expense. We are planning on $117,585 this coming year. That includes continuing the part-time grant writer position, increased salaries, and the potential legal fellowship. Board expenditures come next. We have increased a little bit for reimbursement of board travel in this budget as compared with last year when we were not meeting in person. The change column shows a decrease from last year, and that's because of a multi-year news subscription that is essential to our legislative activities. We paid for a 2-year subscription in the fiscal year that ended March of 2021 that will not need to be paid this coming year. Administrative and fundraising is everything else that we do to support the organization. In the first column at the bottom, you see total expenses of $256,406. That is our planned spending for the year April of 2021 through March of 2022. Looking at income, we talked about PMP, and it is planned to be essentially the same as the prior year actual in the second column. Donations and fundraising is the second row. You can see $75,489 in the first column is our budget plan. That is a $14,000 increase and a stretch goal. We have specific plans for things that are going to enhance our fundraising activities, and we're looking forward to implementing those as the year goes on. We've had good success already from people supporting our legal action on Senate Bill 90. Convention, lobby days, and council, you can see $25,575 is income budgeted this year. Last fiscal year, we had no income for convention and lobby days because we did not have those events during the fiscal year, and there was no registration fee for council. Sponsorships, as well as payments that each of the attendees will make to come to lobby days or the convention, provides this income. On the bottom row, you see total income of $256,406. Here is a summary slide that shows that we are proposing a balanced budget of income and expenses. Take a look at the tentative actual fiscal year 20 to 2021 column in the middle. The net shows spending more than income was $22,910, which came out of our reserve funds.
That's right.
Although the fiscal year 20 to 21 results are not finalized, reserve funds are down to a very minimum level. We have operating cash in reserves at the end of March of 2021 of $25,000. Our plan for fundraising efforts and possibly some cost allocation changes between the two funds may increase this reserve balance. We are taking a very detailed look at how we allocate costs between the two organizations. We have been allocating many costs at 60% to the education fund. With much higher spending on grants this last year, we need a second look at that assumption. As you will see in my later presentation, there is a big difference in the reserves that are available to the education fund as compared with the Florida fund. Getting the allocation to reflect actual staff efforts may help to improve the outlook for the Florida fund reserve balance. Wrapping up, if we have problems as we go through the year, our contingency plans are to reduce spending, either on programs or on advocacy. We will also be monitoring donations and income sources, as well as the grants as we go through the year. This is the point where I will entertain questions. if you have questions on the League of Women Voters of Florida budget, this is the right time to type it into the chat. And I'm asking staff to give me any questions now, and I'll do my best to answer them. Blake, are there any questions in the chat?
Hi, Mark. There are 2 questions in the chat. Sue asked, what are the best fundraising sources?
Well, the best fundraising sources we have had in the past have been our members, and we're looking for ways to extend beyond that. We were successful for the lobby day in order to get some outside sponsorship, and that will continue and be much easier when we have a in-person lobby day coming up this next February.
Great. And the next and last question, I believe, is, just kidding, they're all coming in now. Did the league get any PPP money to help it through the last year?
Yes, we did receive PPP money that benefited the education fund. That was $18,000.
Great. Next question is, what is the breakdown of income from lobby days? How much is sponsorship and how much is from league members?
We had about $2,000 in sponsorship, and the remaining was from our members. We had fewer than 100 members, so it was not a big number. We're looking for more people to attend next February when we have the in-person event.
Okay, next question is, goodness, where do the disbursements to local leagues from the Ed Fund show up?
The Ed Fund's disbursements will show up as part of program expenditures. That'll be the next budget that I'll be presenting. It is not easy to see in the summaries, but as we make that money donated back to the local leagues or for their programs, it shows up as a program expense.
Great, and I did skip one. Is there an increase in funding to our contract lobbyists, more hours to league, or higher cost of services?
We are, really, it is more hours because of the double up in the budget. We're planning on negotiating a stable price from what we're paying currently. We'll see how that happens. The meetings with our lobbyists will be held later on in the month of June.
Okay, and I think this is a great one. Can you explain the difference between the Education Fund and the Florida Fund? And this presentation was just on the Florida Fund. There is another fund presentation coming.
Yes, that's correct. So you are actually a member of the League of Women Voters of Florida, Inc. That is we call it a 501c4 organization. IRS classifies us as social welfare. And we are able to do advocacy and face-to-face lobbying with legislators in this organization without jeopardizing our tax exemption for the organization. The income that we receive is not subject to a federal or a state income tax. The education fund is what IRS refers to as a 501c3 organization. So that is a charity, and our focus is on education activities. That's the exempt purpose that allows people, when they make donations to the education fund, to receive a tax deduction on their personal income tax return for the donations that they make. That's the primary difference between the two. We share an awful lot of what goes on between the organizations, between staff and our resources.
Great, 2 more. How many employees work for the Florida League?
So on the slide I showed earlier, we have currently 3 full-time people and we have 2 part-time people. We have interns, and From time to time, we have grant money that helps us give stipends, and that is infrequent.
And the last question, what were the restricted grant expenses?
The restricted grant expenses in the budget that I sent out with the package, that is related to the grant income that we received. So, for example, League of Women Voters of US gave us a grant in order to help with returning citizens. And they said, here is how we expect you to spend the money. We give a report back to them, giving them our accomplishments, what our deliverables were, how many postcards or social media buys or results there. And that is why it shows up as restricted. So it is special purpose money that helps us to do the programs that we really are looking to do anyway.
That sums up all the questions in the chat. There's one more that just came in. It will be our last question, I promise. And it is, there seems to be a groundswell of outrage in regard to voter suppression resulting in additional donations to local leagues. Will there be any directives related to this additional source of revenue, and where will it be funded?
Well, we are seeing some of that right now. And if it is designated to the education fund because the donor needs to have a tax deduction, and that's where we put the money, we are very much favoring the advocacy fund, the C4 fund, because we know that we need significant new fundraising this year in order to keep the budget in balance. I hope that answers the question. Patty, I'm going to turn the meeting back to you.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that excellent report, and thank you to you as well, Ray. And now it is time for me to adjourn the League of Women Voters of Florida Fund meeting and convene the League of Women Voters of Florida Education Fund meeting. Mark and Ray, back to you.
Thank you. Once again, I'd like to acknowledge the work of the Budget Committee. They worked on both of the Florida Fund as well as the League of Florida. And our chairperson, Ray Kalick, has been kind enough to delegate to me the presentation of the League of Women Voters of Florida Education Fund, Inc. This is the 501c3 organization. The Education Fund is a charitable organization that is entitled to receive donations that qualify for charitable income tax deductions for individuals when filing their personal income tax returns. Let's look at the highlights of the program expenditures. Vote 411 is one of the primary voter services that Education Fund offers. We will make Vote 411 available to local leagues early in December of this budget year in order to prepare for the elections in November of 2022. New this year in the budget is contract services for Salter Mitchell. You may be familiar with their work. They are based in Tallahassee, and they have done an outstanding job of giving us opportunities to spread our message. Their efforts are a big reason that you see Patty Brigham in front of national and local media. We are definitely more effective in educating voters and pressuring the legislature because of Salter Mitchell's efforts. In addition, we will be continuing the Lunch and Learn series as an education function. For Lobby Day in February 2022, the Education Fund will sponsor a recognition event after the lobbying activity for the day is complete. Grants are also a big support for program expenditures. We are anticipating in the budget grants that will support voter services and redistricting, which is going to be starting up this fall. Most expenses are shared between the two organizations. Personnel costs are one of the biggest items, but in addition, the office rent, information technology, and the website, all of our insurance, subscriptions, and board travel is split between the two organizations. Here are the highlights of the expenditures for the education budget. The first column of numbers shows the proposed budget for program and grant costs of $225,400 $498. This is the big focus in our budget this coming year. In the prior year column, we had $464,532 spending on programs and grants. The big decrease is explained by the very high level of activity with last year's presidential election cycle, all the get out the vote efforts, and activity related to underserved communities. We do not expect that this year's grant funding will be available at the same volume as last year's. Employee compensation and contract services in this year's budget increase due to the Salter Mitchell service, changes in personnel that I mentioned in the first budget presentation, and additional legal costs that we are anticipating supporting the bylaws committee activity you'll hear about later in the program. Administration and fundraising costs are increasing to support current operations and also increase fundraising activity. Total expenses are on the bottom of the first column, $442,722. Looking forward to the income for the education fund, donations are one of our important sources. We had some large individual donations last year, and we are not expecting that all of those are going to repeat. But we still need a significant number of donations to meet the budget goals. We plan to leverage the policy issues that we are working on to help spur donations. The fact that Education Fund can offer a tax deduction for donations is an important factor in how we are able to raise more money in this fund. Grant income is planned to be $253,550 compared with last year, $430,593. This year's plan does include our legal fellowship for part of the year, and we're still searching for funding for a grant for that position. We just received $40,000 in a continuation of the Vote Your Voice grant that began in 2020, and the award will also continue in our next budget year. At the bottom row in the first column, total income is $442,722. Here's a quick summary of where we are. We see the proposed fiscal year April of 2021 to March of 2022 budget income and expenses are balanced. Preliminary results for the March 2021 fiscal year show that we actually had very good success with our fundraising efforts, and we didn't spend as much money as we took in. The net in the middle column of $37,358 is an increase in our reserves. The Education Fund's financial position is very good. We increased our reserves and we have a healthy reserve balance carry forward from prior years. In the past, donations have often been greater than expenditures. The sale of the Tallahassee office during 2018 is still a part of the reserves for the Education Fund. At the end of March of this year, operating cash and reserves total $483,000. Wrapping up, our fundraising goals are aggressive. We do not have the motivation of the presidential election, but statewide elections are going to be starting up, and people are going to be aware that donating now is going to support league activities in 2022. Grant applications are the key for the Education Fund program activities. Lisa Cahea's grant writing is very important to our budget plan. Contingency plans for the Education Fund would rely on using reserve funds to continue our important education programs. Those are the highlights of the Education Fund budget. As we did last time, I'll be happy to take questions out of the chat function, so please type those in if you haven't already. And I'll ask staff to read those questions now, and I'll do my best to answer them. Before they start in the chat just a moment ago, Leah Nash put in that I will be available starting at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning on the same Zoom link for tomorrow's meeting to answer any questions. So if we don't have something or have time to get to your question today, please feel free to join us and we could talk tomorrow morning in a smaller group. But Blake, if there are questions, I'm ready for them.
Yes, and just to highlight to everyone, it is going to be a different Zoom link. Leah will go ahead and throw it in the chat again, but it will not be the same as tomorrow's program that you got sent. It is a different one, so if you want to cook up some questions tonight, make sure you grab that link from the Zoom box from Leah. But the first question we have, which is one I think you answered before, but I'll go ahead and pose it to you again. Do litigation expenses fall under the Florida Fund?
We actually have very little cash that we spend for litigation expenses. Our staff gets involved, so their compensation is part of it, but the attorneys and the court costs, those are paid by other donors that go directly to those attorneys or directly to the court. So the money is not an income or expense item in our budget.
Great. This is from Sharon Lynn. When local leagues have earmarked 501c3 sent to the state to keep track of, how often are statements sent to those local leagues?
We send those statements out periodically. If you send an email to the state to Lisa, L-E-S-A, at lwvfl.org, then that will give you an update immediately or within a short time frame of where your money stands, what you've spent it on, and what you still have available.
Okay. There was some technical difficulties in the chat, so let me scroll on down. All right. You mentioned a November 2021 date for Vote 411. Can you confirm that Vote 411 is available for a full year, each of 21 and 22? There are municipal elections before November 2021 that will be covered in our Vote 411.
That's correct. We currently have paid in the last budget year for a Vote 411 license for those local leagues that were interested to have it available for their local elections. So that sign up happened last fall, and hopefully your league was aware of that and is participating. Not sure what the process would be at this point, whether we can add any additional leagues if there are local elections that we're not covering in our Vote 411 today.
Thanks, Mark. Where can one learn about how local leagues who contribute to the Ed Fund apply for money from it?
Can you repeat that? How, apply to the Ed Fund for what?
I believe, they're looking to see if local leagues are able to get money from the education fund.
Okay. We do not have a grant program in the education fund for local leagues, but we do facilitate charitable contributions for local leagues. So for example, the Lower Keys League is a C4 organization, but if we have a donor that wants to receive a tax deduction, then we have them make out a check to the League of Women Voters of Florida Education Fund. We send that check to the office in Orlando, and that becomes a part of our accrual account, the donations that go for the Lower Keys that are able to be spent on things that are not directly related to lobbying activities. So any charitable event or an education event that the local league would have can be funded out of the money that the state league is holding for you. That's the best opportunity I can offer a local league as far as how to share nonprofit money with the state league.
Wonderful. And once again, Leah put in the chat the Zoom link for tomorrow. Two more questions here. In both budgets, what is the Harry T. Burns Society?
Yes, the Harry T. Burns Society is a recognition that we give to donors who give at least $1,000. And there is also a higher level, the Feb T. Burns, who actually is Harry's mother. And if you give $2,500, I believe is the level, that you are recognized as a member of that. This recognition happens in publications that the league has on our website, as well as in printed materials.
Okay, and in the chat, Leah did address the Vote 411. So if you're not connected and you're looking to be for municipal elections, go ahead and reach out to her. And last question I see here is, how do we get accrued money for events, etc.?
Well, if you have money that is already on deposit at the state, there's a form that you can access from the league's website toolbox, and that gives us the information about what amount of money you're asking for, what you're going to use it for, and it facilitates the process of the state league issuing a check either back to your league or back to a vendor that you need to pay for a qualifying event. Patty, at this point, I'll turn the meeting back to you.
I believe there was one more question
Okay,
from Carol. CD20 has a November primary. What will Broward and Palm Beach need to do regarding 411?
So Leah put something into the chat box that suggested that it would be best to contact her directly to see how we can get you signed up to have Vote 411 available for that local election.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Thank you to your committee. Thank you, Ray. Excellent job. I will now adjourn the League of Women Voters of Florida Education Fund meeting and reconvene the League of Women Voters of Florida convention. So it is now time for our nominating committee report, and I would like to introduce from the nominating committee, Connie Pegram. Connie, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. So the first thing I would like to do is recognize the other members of the 2021 State Nominating Committee. This was definitely a group effort, and I'd like to recognize them. The first person is Mary Gutierrez, who was our chairperson. She is in the Pensacola League. Angela Melvin, a member of the Orange County League. Sean Bardelt, who's our one of the committee members appointed by the, she's on the state board. Lisa Yurkin, who's also on the state board. And I really enjoyed working with them this year. I just wanted to recognize all their efforts. Now I'm going to go through the slate that the nominating committee has put together. And Patty, I'm going to read this twice, correct?
You just need to read it once.
Okay, just once. Okay. All right. For president, it is Cecile Schoon, Marisol Zentino, first vice president, Sean Bardelt, the second vice president, Mark Songer as treasurer, Pat Drago as secretary, and those are the officers of the board. The elected board members are Jennifer Adams, Jonathan Hackley, Danielle Irwin, Dr. Julie Kessel, and Megan Pierce.
Connie, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, one more thing. The 2023 nominating committee is Joanne Lynch as the chairperson, Sarah Rich, and Adrian Kaltman. And their bios have been included in the convention materials. So you should have bios or biographies for each of the individuals in your packets. I'll turn it back over to Patty.
Connie, thank you to you and your team for all the work on the nominating committee. It is not an easy job. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, at this time, it is my duty to call for nominations from the floor. First, do we have a nomination from the floor for president? Do we have a nomination from the floor for president? Hearing none, do we have a nomination from the floor for first vice president? Do we have a nomination from the floor for first vice president? Moving on, do we have a nomination from the floor for second vice president? Do we have a nomination from the floor for second vice president? Do we have a nomination from the floor for secretary? Do we have a nomination from the floor for secretary? And hearing none, do we have a nomination from the floor for treasurer? Do we have a nomination from the floor for treasurer? Hearing none, we move on. Do we have a nomination from the floor for a director? Do we have a nomination from the floor for a director? Okay, hearing none, I close the nominations. Thank you again to the nominating committee. We've got to have one more report before we take a bathroom break. I'd like to introduce Charlotte Nicomo, our bylaws chair, for a committee announcement. Charlotte, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Patty. Boy, it's great to see all these faces. I'm loving it. I would like to thank Mark Songer and Pat Drago for being on my committee. It was the three of us. And after reviewing several bylaws from other state leagues, we discovered that many league bylaws needed updating, just like ours. Due to time constraints, my committee decided to make the following recommendation to the new board. We suggest that shortly after the new administration takes over, the president appoint a new bylaws committee. This will give the committee ample time to rewrite and update both sets of bylaws, one for the Florida Fund and one for the Education Fund, which will be followed by a review by an attorney before seeking approval from the new board and eventually approved at the 2022 convention. And that's my report, and thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte, and that will actually be the 2023 convention.
Oh, got it. Sorry.
No worries. It's hard enough to keep up with what year this is. Thank you so much, Charlotte. And now everyone, let's take a 10-minute break, and it's 3:35. So let's come back at 3:45 to continue with the remainder of Plenary 1. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a good break. We are moving pretty efficiently through this plenary session 1. And there is no need for a credentials report as we don't have any voting this afternoon. And we've had some questions about that. The reason that there's no voting today is because the voting is done tomorrow. Mark, for example, has gone over the budget very carefully to give you time for questions. He's taking questions from you if you have them tomorrow morning at 8. In just a moment, our program chair, Justice Peggy Quince, is going to go over the program proposals, but we don't do the actual voting on policy positions or the budget or the slate until tomorrow. Today, we lay everything out. Tomorrow, the debate and the vote on the positions of policy take place. And then the last thing, and we vote on the budget, and then the last thing we do is vote on the slate. So with that being said, we don't need a credentials report from Sharon Lynn. So we're going to move right on to our proposed 2021 to 2023 program presentation from the Honorable Peggy Quince, our program chairperson. Peggy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Patty Brigham, our president. And I thank you very much for appointing me to be the chair. It is really my honor and privilege to present our program. But I'd first like to thank our local leagues for the proposals that they sent in. And I also want to thank the board for the robust discussions we had about the proposals. It took quite a while. We had quite a few proposals, but now we have a proposed program for you. And as we go through this program, I want you to really think about the League of Women Voters and how it started 101 years ago, at the same time that the 19th Amendment giving women the right to vote was ratified. From its inception, the League's mission has been to empower voters and to defend democracy. And that has remained the League's mission over this 101 years. Through the development of 750 leagues around the country and the 29 leagues here in the state of Florida. And so I want you to keep that mission in mind as we discuss the proposed program for 2021 through 2023. I am only going to discuss those items that are highlighted in yellow because these are the additions. And I will also show you when something is being taken out and it's in strike through. I'd also like to remind you, as our president just indicated, we will be voting on and discussing these and any amendments that you might have tomorrow. Today, you can ask general questions about programming, but the actual discussion of these proposals will be tomorrow. So with that in mind, the first proposal is to ensure, under Florida Constitution, ensure that fair district standards are adhered to for the redistricting of congressional and Florida legislative districts. Also, under government in Florida, we have a slight word change. We're adding the word "for" in the sentence that says support measures to protect, extend, and encourage the use of the franchise and to advocate for fair methods of financing political campaigns, including public financing. And we're putting a period at the end of that sentence. The next proposed change is to eliminate the word absentee before ballot and put in vote by mail. And I believe that's pretty self-explanatory. The next proposal under election law issues for action, we have a proposal to delete support retention of the 1968 Florida Constitutional Amendment for home rule by municipalities and counties in the administration of local issues. We also have a proposal to delete support the updating of the Electronic Registration Information Center. And we have a proposal to add support state funding of return postage for vote by mail ballots in all, I believe that should be counties, when congressional and Florida legislative offices are on the ballot. Under our education in Florida, we're adding, the proposal is to add, establish a statewide civics education subcommittee under the State Education Committee. And in issues for action, the proposal is to eliminate that first action bullet, and in its place, we will have promote adequate and equitable funding of public education by using a multi-year approach to bring Florida's total per pupil funding to the median of the National Education Association's ranking of the states, providing school districts adequate funding and the flexibility to implement programs and adopt spending plans that best meet their community's needs. Also, resolve the inequities in capital improvement funding. And lastly, oppose the use of public funding for the expansion of funding of private education, including through voucher programs. That is all the proposals under education. We move to under social policy, an issue in action, support ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment by the Florida legislature and passage of a resolution by the US Congress to remove the deadline to ratify the ERA. We move on. Our next is under gun safety. Support changes in law to allow local communities to enact ordinances to greater gun safety in their jurisdiction. And an issue for action under gun safety, support changes in the law to make lying on a background check punishable by law. We move on to move on to sustainability in Florida under the issues for action. support the development of state, regional, and local climate change plans. Request the governor join the U.S. Climate Alliance by 2023. Request Florida mayors to join the Climate Mayors by 2023. Okay, we move on to natural resources. The first issue for action: protect our natural springs from nutrient runoff and unsuitable uses, for example, commercially bottled water. Under land use and issues for action, we have proposed the following: support the preparation and implementation of a new state growth management plan that addresses current needs. Secondly, support the implementation of the Water and Land Legacy Amendment consistent with the intent of the adopted language. And third, take steps to ensure that land uses are exemplary of environmental justice. Energy. We have several proposed additions to our issues for action under energy. Support the adoption of relevant energy alternatives. Support public transportation that does not rely on fossil fuels. Advocate statewide reduction of greenhouse gas emissions while maintaining a robust economy that is in line with the UN and Paris Accords. And that is the reduction of 45% by 2030 and 100% by 2050. Back placing a price on carbon emissions, whether cap and trade or carbon tax fee, while ensuring equity in its implementation. Support the adoption of relevant energy alternatives and support public transportation that does not rely on fossil fuels. And I believe that's already has, the last two are actually the first two that we've already discussed. Okay. We can move on to fresh water resources. The proposed changes under issues for action is to update the study of groundwater resources to ensure they are adequate to meet future needs. Additionally, support septic to sewer conversion and state tracking of septic inspections. Request maximum support for Everglades agricultural area funding. And support enforcement of agricultural best management practices regarding releases to surface water. Now, under our coastal management issues for action, advocate for an equitable transition plan to move people from high-risk areas where climate change mitigation is not feasible. Another issue for action, state support of coastal communities in developing localized responses to sea level rise and saltwater intrusion into drinking water wells. Environmental protection and pollution control. 2 issues for action proposed. Take positions to preserve our wetland ecosystems and discourage use of single-use, non-essential disposable plastics from fossil fuels. Our final area for consideration is under agriculture, issues for action. Support the preparation and implementation of a new state growth management plan that addresses current needs. Second, support the implementation of the Water and Land Legacy Amendment consistent with the intent of the adopted language. And finally, take steps to ensure that land uses are exemplary of environmental justice. That's a duplicate. I was just, yeah, those are duplications for the land use. If you go up, land use was the first area actually under natural resources in Florida. And you will see that those 2 items are also listed under land use. And it's more appropriate there. So those are the proposals, and this is for that have been voted on and approved by our board that you will be looking at, and we will discuss and vote on tomorrow. Are there any general questions about our program?
Peggy, we do have some questions, and I'm happy to read them from the chat box to you.
Okay. And if I can't answer them, our president is here.
And so is our parliamentarian.
And our.
I wasn't at the board meeting, so I don't really.
Oh, that's true. So this one is, okay, so let me get started. The first question is from Carol Smith. Under elections, is it properly called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact?
Which bullet are we looking at?
This would be under elections. And I believe that is the appropriate name, is the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. I do know that we have Kathleen Frampton here, who is our expert on that issue.
Hi, it's Kathleen. It is in fact called, the bill itself is called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. So that change would be appropriate.
All right.
Oh, okay.
Kathleen, thank you for that.
All right.
I'm sitting here with Pat, and we will make that change for tomorrow.
Thank you, Leah. We have a question from Susan out of Jacksonville, and I believe this is too late, Susan. The time for the proposals for program to the board is passed. We're not able to add that under education. It's too late. We put out a number of notices to send in your program proposals, and the board has already gone through them and voted, but thank you. As always, 2 years from now. Okay, from Bill Johnson, could you provide background reasons for deleting the home rule action under election law?
It's under something, it's,
I can read you the rationale. The bullet point related to home rule is out of place and is a repeat of the second sentence found in the paragraph under Florida Constitution heading.
Was everyone able to hear that?
I can put it in the chat too.
No, I could not hear it.
Leah, please put that into the chat. Thank you, Leah. We have a suggested edit from Denise Elliott.
we're doing that tomorrow. If you would just put that, hold that for tomorrow, that's when we're doing edits and amendments to the proposed program.
Thank you, Peggy.
So any of those like that anyone may have, if you would just hold them, make a note, hold them for tomorrow, and we will deal with that.
Right, and Denise, that would go to your suggested edit on the last action bullet of election law should read all counties. So that would be something that would be suggested as an amendment tomorrow.
But all county?
Counties.
I think that was already there.
It's like IES.
I think it's just a technical issue that it should have been counties and it just wasn't typed properly.
Thank you. Okay, from Dorothy or Dorneth. Are general reasons available for items that are being eliminated?
Yes.
Peggy, did you want to expound on those a little bit?
Which one are we talking about in particular?
Well, there's no specification. It's just items that are being deleted or eliminated. Are there general reasons available?
The general reasons for those under education law, those action items, is that they are someplace else. They are still a part of the program, but they are in another place and they don't need to be here because support the retention of the 1968 Florida Constitutional Amendment isn't an education item per se. It is a Florida government item. And so that's why it's being eliminated from there. And although support the updating of the electronic registration information center is being eliminated, it is also, where is that?
Above that.
It's
It's the second from the top.
it's already up there at the second from the top in under election law. So it really is so redundant. You don't really need it down at the bottom there. If you will see, it says support Florida's participation in the electronic registration information system, and that's like bullet point number 3.
We have a similar question from Lindsay. Under election law, removing the 9th bullet related to home rule. Why are we removing this? Aren't we in support of home rule? Yes, we are in.
But it's not an education item. It is a government item.
And it's already listed.
And look at, if you will look at Florida Constitution under government in Florida, it is already there. It says support retention of the 1968 Florida Constitutional Amendment for home rule by municipality. So what we're eliminating under education is already in the places where it should be.
Okay, Ann Smith asked, what will be done with the duplications?
Well, the duplication will just be, as we said, the ones that were under land use and under, what was the other one? Agriculture. It seems to me it's appropriate to leave it where it is appropriate, and that is under land use, and it would be eliminated from as an action item under agriculture. And so we're going to clean that up, and so tomorrow when you see it on the screen, it will not be in two places.
Thank you, Peggy. From Claire Ann, what are the non-recommended program items? We don't have any.
We don't have any non-recommended program items this year.
Okay, from Susan, when we vote tomorrow, we can only vote yes or no on each new proposal. Is that correct?
Well, you can ask, if you want to make an amendment to the language or something, you can make proposed amendments to it.
Okay. From Kathy, and let me just clarify, there were some non-recommended program items that were submitted, but they were withdrawn by those who submitted them. I just wanted to clarify that. Kathy has a question. The only changes in the program can be to action motion.
No. Pat can answer that. What?
Pat, our parliamentarian, would you like to answer that question, please?
I'm trying to find my unmute.
I didn't understand what was the question?
I'm not sure if I understand, Kathy. You're saying the only changes in the program can be to action motions?
I thought I just heard somebody say that no changes could be made to the program.
Okay, I've got it now. Okay, I think tomorrow, under consideration of the program, we would entertain amendments from the floor. Now, it wouldn't be a new study item. I'm really echoing here. It would not be a new study item, but it would be changes to the language to clarify or amend or even change whatever it is. That's what we're going to be considering tomorrow, would be changes, amendments, changes to the language as proposed, etc. What we don't take up at this point is a new study item or a new position, okay? But we do fine tune, refine, and if necessary, you know, the convention delegates may propose a substantive change here so long as it's working within the recommended program.
Thank you, Pat. Here's a question from Susan. What amendments can be submitted?
Well, I think, you know, I think we're going to have to see what you want to amend, and I'd be happy to talk with somebody, or I'm sure Peggy will as well. But let's just say, I think if you have changes in wording, remove the inequities in capital improvement funding under education. If you felt like that was, oh, you can strike the language, you could move to strike the language. Okay, that you say, I think that that's not appropriate. That's the kind of thing that are considered by the delegates in convention. You would not add to the list to have a new item, but you would make sure that that if there was language that was struck or revised, et cetera, that's what the delegates will consider tomorrow.
Thank you. Beth has asked again about the discussion of non-recommended program items. We had none. There were two, and they were withdrawn by those who recommended them. So there are no non-recommended program items this year. From Sarah, under the election program, support statewide use of an open primary election system that would allow the broadest possible vote participation. Is this a change? I thought we did not support this. Happy to take the question offline. Peggy,
I'd like to say that was already in our program. That's why it's not highlighted. anything that is not highlighted was already a part of our program. And so all we are talking about now are making additions. If someone had wanted to strike that, there should have been a proposal to strike that. And at this point, we're not, as I understand it, we are not taking those kind of substantive changes to the program that were not already submitted and gone through the board review process.
Thank you. That's correct. Gail is wanting to know, will you send out revised pages for these program items so we can print them for ourselves? Leah, is that something that staff has time to do before tomorrow?
Yeah, we can do that, but we'll also have it on the screen tomorrow as we go over.
I think that would be adequate. We've got a pretty bad echo.
And then give it to them afterwards.
We will have it on the screen tomorrow, so everybody will be able to see them.
And I'm
and after.
And I'm sure that after we have done our voting and it is a done deal, or we've made our decisions, that those can then be sent out to everyone.
Okay, thank you. We will be live editing the document as we go along tomorrow. So you'll all see the edits being made as amendments come in and are approved, if they're approved.
They can't add a new issue.
Okay, I'm hearing a lot of background noise. Will the additional issues for action require study and action prior to advocacy? Bill, I'm not sure if I understand your question. Bill, if you want to unmute and articulate your question, I'm not sure I understand it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm just not familiar with the process here. Some of these things seem like they're intuitively obvious, that it's just a statement or an expansion of an existing policy that we have. Others seem like they might be something that we'd have to consider, maybe the costs of them or some other aspect of it before we would say, oh, let's go do that. Traditionally, to follow our study and action or study and consensus process. And I'm just wondering how that fits in here.
Well, Bill, that's really something that we decide tomorrow when we make votes. We do have debate. We'll have, if we were in person, we would have a pro microphone and an opposed microphone. So instead, we'll be doing it in the chat and it'll be alternating pro and con. So everybody will have a say before we vote on these items. Did that answer your question?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I have to make a correction.
Okay.
Our parliamentarian has just told me that you can, in fact, tomorrow propose a new issue for action.
Okay.
So if in fact, I don't remember who asked that question, had a new proposal, tomorrow is the time to bring it up. When I get to the point, with a rationale, please, and it will come under, I'm going to go tomorrow when we are discussing this, I will start out with government in Florida. So if it falls under that heading, that is under the Florida Constitution, under finance and taxation, under election law, those are the three subheadings under government in Florida. So when I get to government in Florida, if that proposed action item falls under that, then that's when you would make that proposal.
Thank you. And so that goes back to Susan, I believe earlier on had an action item for education. So Susan, and also.
And that's the next topic. After
yes.
Government, education would be the next one.
Right. And after Peggy's presentation today, we'll be hearing from our action motion chair, LaVon Grayson, who will talk about the action motion process. So I see additional questions here that are really going to be applicable to tomorrow. If there are conflicting paragraphs that need amending, for example, you know, either we are for open primaries or we are not. Yes, we are, is listed in study and action. So there will be plenty of time to debate and make amendments as necessary. So any other questions for Justice Quince before we proceed to the next part of our agenda? Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much.
All right, it's
Thank
my
you.
pleasure, and I look forward to our robust discussion tomorrow.
It will be. I know it will be. Okay, so it is now my pleasure to welcome our State Board member, LaVon Grayson, who is our Action Motion Chair, and she's going to explain the action motion process. LaVon?
Okay, need to get unmuted there. Our action motion, first I'm gonna start off with a definition. And an action is a motion that requires action by the league to a Florida government official, agency, or body. This is done in a formal meeting of convention or council and may include positions that may not be legislative priorities, known at the LWVS level as the action agenda. It's actually a way to extend through direct delegate discussion and vote. This is a one-time only communication urging a particular response and does not alter the legislative priorities. The best use of an action motion is to address late-breaking government action, such as a pending vote of the legislature. However, should the legislature not be in session, the action motion may also be used to address the governor, the cabinet, and other state officials, as well as commissions or pending or upcoming matters. The process is first you submit your action motion by 7 p.m. tonight in writing to the Action Motions Committee. The presiding officer appoints this committee. A prominently announced deadline, 7 p.m., is proposed for motions is necessary to give the committee time to review each proposal. As a practical consideration, the wording of the motion should be limited to 1 page. The Action Motions Committee is charged with determining whether the action requested by the proposed motion, 1, conforms with league position at the state level or with the LWVUS action agenda and is addressed to the appropriate government level. In this case, Florida. An action motion must always be addressed to the appropriate government level. If the motion refers to a bill, a copy of the bill must be submitted with the proposed motion. And copies of the bill or any source material should be available to the committee and to the delegates as well. If the Action Motion Committee determines the proposed motion meets the criteria, the committee will approve the motion for submission to the delegate body. The committee is a facilitator. Its approval does not constitute endorsement. If the motion is made and after debate, approved by a majority vote, the state board must perform the action requested. For example, a letter is sent to the governor, but its passage does not alter the legislative priorities. It's a one-time only action. An action motion gives delegates the opportunity to address an issue that is not a legislative priority by requiring the lead to take specific action. Thoughtful use of this device can extend the league's voice. If there are any questions?
If you have a question for Levon, please place it in the chat box. Okay, Levon, I don't think there are any questions.
Good. I know I received some earlier. I didn't know if anyone else had questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Levon. Remember, everyone, you have until 7 p.m. Eastern today to turn in your action motion communication to Levon. Thanks so much, Levon. Okay, we're going to continue on to the last item on our agenda, and we will hear from our Executive Director, Leah Nash, with an announcement.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for being here and being so patient with us. And thanks again to all of our volunteers, our board, everybody's done such a wonderful job. So some quick announcements for tomorrow morning. We will begin at 9 a.m. and we are going to be practicing voting at that time. I know it was a little bit rough, so we're going to do some practice sessions with that, with raising hands and whatnot. Once again, we will be live editing the program. So we'll be doing that as we may have our discussions. And the last thing is that Mark is available, again, if you have any questions about the budget from 8 to 8:45 a.m. tomorrow morning. And I'm going to put that Zoom link in the chat right there. So thank you very much. And those are our announcements.
Send something to Levon.
Oh, and Levon, her email address for action motions is lwgrayson@gmail.com. And I can put that in the chat too. And those are due, action motions are due by 7 p.m. tonight.
Thank you, Leah. And I want to thank everyone. I think this is a record. We're getting out a half an hour early from the first day of convention. I'd like to thank all of our members. The first 30 minutes was a little bit rocky as we were getting used to the voting tool on Zoom. But you all hung in with us and gave us your gracious patience. We thank you for that. And I am glad that you all attended. We've had a wonderful turnout. So thank you for being here. And we look forward to a robust debate tomorrow on all of our program items. And we'll wrap up the convention. We start at 9 and the plan is to end at 5. So in the meantime, this meeting of the first day of League of Women Voters of Florida Biennial Convention is adjourned at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a good evening. See you tomorrow.